brilliant to be joined by you today, Adam. Thank you for making the trip down to rainy London today. So today, in press, I've seen that you've hit 900 agents.
Yes, we have. Well, thank you for having me, first of all. I didn't bring a brolly, which is why I've got the rain spots on me. But yeah, 900 agents, yeah, who'd have thought for a business, doomed for failure 6 years ago. So yeah, I'm pretty proud of that. I mean, there's still a long way to go, I think, but yeah, looking forward to the next 5 or 6 years.
So good feels like an understatement, doesn't it, in terms of the scale, the growth and the impact that you guys have made in the industry. If I sort of rewind the clock a little bit and go back to your sort of early career and in preparation for the podcast.
Started at Country Properties in Hitchin, so part of the Hunters Group now. Yeah. They started in 1974. They were the first franchised estate agency business in the country. I went there as a trainee estate agent, junior estate agent. I don't think you're allowed to call them junior estate agents anymore, are you? But literally, 11th of August, 1997, walked in the front door and thought, this is the career for me. Loved the energy, the atmosphere, partly because of Dave and Paul, my two bosses, and Jill and Sally, who used to work there as well. And so yeah, did that, and then for 9 years, I'd always been entrepreneurial. So I used to sell cans of Coke at school I'd buy multi-pack cans of Coke and then sell them for an uplift. I had a little business when I was 13 called ABC Services, Adam, Ben and Chris, my brother Chris and Ben. We used to wash cars and mow lawns and stuff like that. So I'd always been entrepreneurial, probably hadn't realised it. But then when I got into Country Properties, I thought this is the job that can lead to me having a business in an industry that I'm going to love. That was like my instant thought on day one. And so it took me 9 years. I bottled it a few times over the prior 2003 onwards. I felt I was ready after 7 or 8 years. It was 6 years. I felt I was ready to go out on my own. But I was young. I was 25. So I felt I was probably a bit too young to be trusted with someone's biggest asset, which I think is a big failing of youngsters. I think they can be trusted. But at the time, I was nervous and fearing of failure and all the rest of it. And then 2006, I set up Hatched. So that was the second online estate agent in the UK.
One of the things, I sort of went, in my first business, which was actually a franchise business, I set up, I guess, when I was 27. And that does feel young now, doesn't it? When you're in your sort of mid to late 20s. And often, even if you think about like a traditional branch model, I think a lot of business owners would think about someone who's in their 20s as still being relatively junior. Do you think our attitudes have changed, or do you think we need to give younger people a chance? What do you think?
I mean, I was 28, so similar age to you when I started. I don't know. I think it's probably the mindset of the individual. Actually, we've had agents who've joined. So I'm running EXP now. We've had people that have joined at 23, 24, and they're making a success of it. And it's in your own head. I don't think it's there'll be some customers who think, oh, they're quite young. Can I trust them with my biggest asset? But if that young agent can be, determined enough and have the passion and the drive to go out and find that business and show social proof that they've listed and sold and got good reviews and they get recommended, then no one's going to care about their age really. But I think it's in the mind of the person, of the individual actually.
Well, I think that's so true of so much in our business.
Yeah.
When you talk about charging a premium fee, 100% mindset. When you think about charging an upfront fee, it's a 100% mindset. When you think about, as you say, having the balls to actually quit the job and go for it, it's about your beliefs. The habits and behaviours of people in their 20s are different to the habits and behaviours of people in their 40s. And there's pluses and minuses, aren't there? And there'll be some customers who won't engage with you, but there'll be other customers saying, do you know what? I love his energy. I love her energy. They're the one to help represent us in the sale of property, even though they're as my kids.
And the irony is that those youngsters have got less to lose. The avatar for us at EXP is kind of, I would say, someone in their 40s, probably got young kids, they've probably got a mortgage, they've got a lot more to lose, but they've had that 15-year hamster wheel of working for the man and fed up with it. Whereas actually the 25 to 28-year-olds have nothing to lose, but they enjoy working for the man because they're in the early stages of their career. So
I think being in that environment, team environment, is one of the things which has been hugely formative. Okay, great. So you set up Hatched early in the online estate agency journey. Rightmove by that point was only 6 years old. New technology available, new opportunities available for businesses in terms of distribution. So what was that experience like?
That was the driver for setting up Hatched was that, so we couldn't afford to pay the bills. So our cash flow, there was me and my two business partners, actually, the two Jameses, and we didn't have enough money to see the business through for the first 6 to 9 months, which is what we felt we needed. And with the portal costs and all the rest of it, we felt that was a barrier to us. So we thought, well, how can we solve this problem? And it was upfront fees, and it was great photos. It was a floor plan, 100% guaranteed. It was virtual tours. And so we thought, okay, well, we can turn that around, do all of the good stuff and charge up front, which will then get more clients because we're charging less, but we're charging up front. We'll solve the cash flow problem and we'll give the client a great service. So that was the concept behind the whole thing, really, when we first started. But it was done out of a need of having to figure out our cash flow rather than working in a normal estate agency environment. And that's what then became the differentiator, and that's what, I'd like to think that's what Purplebricks saw, and they sort of saw, well, that model's growing and they can charge up front, the client's not too bothered about it generates cash flow. And, we made a lot of noise, and none of us had any investment at the time. We're fully bootstrapped, no debt, no investment, all three of us. And then Purplebricks came along with this huge budget, this huge marketing budget. And I'm sure they must have done a lot of research on the three of us, because we were the big three players at the time. I'm not sure we're their inspiration, but they certainly took the best parts and probably made it better. Their deferred payment thing was a game changer, absolute game changer. That really was the tipping point, I think, when they introduced that. They grew, but they didn't grow exponentially, and they introduced the deferred model in September. They started in April, introduced the deferred in the September, and I thought, oh God, this is trouble now. We're in a spot of bother now, because they've got the money, they've got this deferred thing, the client's going to go for it. And I remember actually, I used to be quite aggressive in the media, in the industry press, and I always say I was the second most hated man in the industry after Russell Quirk. So I said to my PR company, look, can you soften me up in the industry, because I think there'll be acquisitions? And they didn't want to do that, because they thought, we're getting good traction. I said, no, trust me, Purplebricks are going to go like this, and I would imagine the corporates are going to probably look to acquire. So I said, I need to be nice to the industry, because I can't piss off people like David Livesey at Connells.
What was the sort of more outrageous stuff that you did to create that?
I tended to criticise the technology that agents had not introduced, rather than the commission side of it. I didn't go down the route of belittling someone's commission, because I understood they were on a no sell, no fee. We had an online area where the vendor could log into and see their stats from the number of clicks. We had on the hotels where it says 346 people have looked at this hotel in the last 3 days. We developed something like that, and we did a press release about it, and I got absolutely roundly criticised, saying this is completely pointless. And I said, well, if it makes a 0.5% of difference, then it's not pointless for the client. I remember criticising VAT and the fact that VAT wasn't, given as the full fee. And actually, the Ombudsman changed their ruling about a year later, because initially in our website we said 199 plus VAT for upfront, and then we were the first to change it to 200, 300 pound including VAT. But then I softened it, and so the PR company, I said, look, let's start taking pop shots at Purplebricks. That's what we did, and we tried to be a bit more nice, still a bit edgy, but just a bit nicer to the industry. And then lo and behold, in kind of the March 2015, I think, we had 4 offers on the table. And then in the May, I phoned up David Livesey, the group CEO of Connells at the time, and I said, David, I'm really sorry, I'm going with somebody else, and we were going to merge with another online estate agent. And he said, okay. There was like silence on the phone, and he said, where are you now, Adam? I said, well, I'm in Hitchin, of course, centre of the universe. And he said, I'll be there in 45 minutes. And he put the phone down, and he literally was there in 45 minutes at the nearest Starbucks. It was amazing to see, this guy's, the largest estate agency brand in the UK, group in the UK, and he's dropping everything to come and see little old me. And I was really impressed with that.
What about the lessons then? I mean, other than, I guess, doing your due diligence?
Yeah, I learned. I mean, I'm rubbish at managing people. I cannot manage people. I'm rubbish at it. So I learned how to manage people better, although I'm still not very good at it.
What do you think makes you a bad manager? Or
I've never needed managing. I've got an inner drive. My mindset is that I expect everyone to be the same as me, and that's my biggest weakness, and they're not, and that's fine, and I've finally accepted that that's the case. But yeah, I mean, again, I'll work with people and try and coach them, and I don't want to say, it sounds really cheesy and maybe a little bit arrogant, but I think you're either a leader or a manager. I'm not sure, it's very difficult to be both, and I think I'm probably more on the leader kind of side where I can set a vision and say a message, and people go, yeah, I'll buy into that.
Have you ever come across the book Traction?
No, I haven't. I'm going to make a note of that.
Yes, it's basically what you've just described there. He makes this argument that there are 2 different types of people at the head of an organisation, a visionary and an integrator. Effectively, most people who found businesses, the entrepreneurial people, are visionaries. So they are brilliant at setting a direction. They're amazing at communicating their vision. They're great at key client relationships, relationship building, the nitty-gritty of setting a process and then holding a leadership team accountable to executing that. That is the place where the chief operating officer, if you will, the integrator sits in that seat. And it's effectively a methodology called the Entrepreneur's Operating System. And I actually use it in all of the businesses which I'm involved in. as a way, because, again, probably a bit like you, I sit 100% in the visionary, but also visionaries come up with 20 ideas. Like the organisation, if you try to implement all of them in an organisation on Whiplash, we're going to do this. I've got this great idea ready.
Yeah.
What about this? The integrator to filter out all the crap that you come out with and say, oh my God, that one.
Yeah.
We now need to bet on hard. So,
you just saying that, I was, John Cook is a visionary, and I'm probably sitting in that camp, and he'd put me in as COO of Easy Property, and he's the CEO, and both of us were, so I wasn't able to implement his vision because I'm not an implementer, an integrator, as you called it, and so maybe that was one of the mistakes we made at Easy Property, but I think it was probably more to do with the client not wanting a big orange board in their front garden, to be honest.
I want to talk more about EXP then. You're a very measured guy, but I also feel the pride. There's a real pride about what's been achieved with you and the team. What do you put that success down to?
God, I mean, I could probably go back to the day I was born, actually. So I don't talk about it very much. My dad died when I was 1. So, that's kind of like driven me he took his own life. So it's driven me as a kind of from a very early age to wanting to make a mark on the world. So that's it's just, I'm so driven and super determined. But I've learned a lot about relationship building, and I was roundly criticised for hatched in the industry. And I think I scaled that. I didn't scale it to what EXP is, but we were doing 250 instructions a month at one point. So we were probably in the top 25, 30 agents, I'm guessing. And so then when I was roundly criticised for going to Easy Property and, on Property Industry Eye from the fake names and all that, it kind of gave me even more determination to show that I wasn't just a one-trick pony. I could scale, a high-fee business as well across the country. First time I was criticised on one of the comments, I was called a no-tie-wearing, bum-chinned wanker by one of the comments. And that was the first time ever that I'd been criticised in the industry and on a public forum. And I phoned Ros Renshaw up and I said, Ros, my daughter's 1. She's going to see this one day. Is this kind of how we want to behave in the industry? And she said, no, I fully understand. She was great. I love Ros. She's brilliant. And she said she'll take the comment down. And I thought about it. And I said, do you know what? Actually, just leave it, because it will probably thicken my skin a little bit. And over the course of a couple of years, my skin thickened, and I really don't care anymore. I remember when we announced that we were launching EXP, and Smile Please, whoever that is, thank you, said, let's put a pin in this and see where we are in 12 months. I'd like to meet Smile Please and say, well, we've put a pin in it. We're 72 months on, and we're the largest estate agency brokerage brand in the UK. So yeah, but those little comments has probably added fuel to the fire of my determination to try and scale another business.
So what's been the core ingredients to that success, in your opinion?
There's a number of them. So we don't allow people to join with less than 2 years experience, unless they're joining a team now. We've just wiggled that a little bit recently. So that was the first thing. I think being super accessible is one of the traits that I have learned from the US. Glenn Sampert is the founder of EXP. He'll wander around conference. This guy's a multi-billionaire. He doesn't need to work ever again. Neither do his kids, his grandkids, his great-grandkids. He doesn't need to be there. And unlike other brokerages in America, he doesn't cocoon himself in his upper tier, his C-suite. He'll wander around, he'll meet agents. That creates a sense of community around the founder and the whole leadership team in America. And then I think the model, I honestly think the model cascades agents, because agents are rewarded for growing the business through equity and the revenue share bit, the recruitment side of it. And the hard bit was educating people on that part of it, I felt, because everyone just wanted to come in and sell houses. And that's what we focused on. And we still focus on that to this day. It's all about, we call it production. It's all about production.
As you sort of, I guess, think forward, I'm really interested to find out about the international side of things, and how you've now gone from just being UK focused to actually reaching the international expansion. What do you think, from all of the experience you've had so far, your superpower is as an individual?
Probably the authenticity around, I'm pretty straight and direct, but I'm not too direct that upsets people. I can weave my way around a tricky subject. I don't know, if you boil it all down, I'm an entrepreneur. And all the guys joining are entrepreneurs, so they can relate to my story from 20 years ago. Even though it's 20 years old now, they can relate. I can relate to them, and they can. It's relatability. It's just the fact that I'm one of them. I'm one of those guys. I've been there. I know exactly what it feels like, and I would go back there again, and I will go back there again when I quit my role, and I will do one day, because everyone does. I'll go and be an agent with EXP. I'll go full circle, and I tell that to agents, and agents probably go, okay, well, that's cool. He's going to be an agent one day.
We'll say it feels like a great time to take a break, and so we're going to return and we're going to talk about the international expansion and the future plans for EXP.
Good stuff. Look forward to it.
My name's Carl Judd and I'm the MD of Ashton's.
My name's Alan Webb, the business is Griffin Residential Group Limited. We've had a number of CRMs over the years.
Has given us that confidence that we know we can increase their turnover.
We're truly in one place. Greenhouse has been the holy grail.
Going back to your previous life at Hatched, and it's the obvious point to make, isn't it? Is that that was a value proposition. Purplebricks was sort of a value proposition. Actually, the fees weren't wildly dissimilar when you pro-rata them back up to no sale, no fee compared to other agents. Do you think that those online models had a contribution towards agents dropping their fees?
Maybe a tiny bit, but I think the portals have had that contribution.
Okay.
I think the portals have made it a level playing field for all agencies. So when I was at Country Properties, we had a double fronted office on Estate Agents Row. We were the biggest office. We had a queue out the door on a Saturday morning. Five Nations at the time was on, and I was like desperate to go and leave so I could go and watch England against France. But you couldn't because there was a queue out the door. And then Stevens, Dave, the guy who ran it, lovely guy, had a single office with a small window around the back of the church. No one knew he existed. And so when I was going out to valuations up against Stevens, which was not very often, I was able to justify my 1.75% fee or my 1.95% as we charged at the time. And he was unable to justify charging the same. So he would have to then undercut us. Within 5 years of Rightmove being around, he was able to say, doesn't matter about their big window. No one was looking in the window because no one was queuing up outside the door anymore, and they weren't. They just weren't. And so he was able to say, I'm on Rightmove as well, and I only charge 1.25%. So I had very little to use in my arsenal, in my kit. I had other stuff, the network and blah, blah, blah. We got a Park Lane office at the Guild and all that stuff. But really the consumer became so obsessed and hooked on Rightmove that the consumer drove those fees down because of the portals. And I don't want to blame Rightmove, but because it's a mindset thing and we should have been better and we should have been stronger.
And there are still agents out there. One of my clients charges 2% no sale, no fee, 1.75 part repaid and 1.5 all up front. One of the businesses, I was talking about my kind of kleptomaniac business founding. One of the businesses I founded was a business called Boomerang in 2014. And it was an NPS customer service surveys, which we did for estate agents. So we call their customers at various trigger points throughout the journey, and we would do telephone surveys. Basically, from 10,000 telephone surveys I did, there are two key bits of feedback which come back. Number one, they want to be kept really well informed about what's going on. And number two, they want a single point of contact. Now, that single point of contact in a traditional branch model can change, I think. Certainly if you call up and you speak to Bob and he says, oh, it's Fred who's dealing with it, and that wasn't my viewer, I'll get Fred to call you back. That experience is poor. And of course that lends itself, doesn't it, very much to the sort of, we call it self-employed, but the single agent model, regardless of how they're paid.
Yeah.
I sort of wonder whether we've entered into this negative feedback loop where as fees have gone down, service standards and wages relatively have been cut, which means that service standards go down and relative wages get cut, and you just end up in this sort of death spiral. I mean, if you were sort of giving advice to agents out there who are not in the self-employed arena in terms of fees, what would you say to them?
Well, it's a mindset thing, and you've got to believe in the value that you're providing. But I 100% agree with just going back to this self-employed part of it. I think that EXP agents could probably be charging 2.5% because it is a single point of service. Exactly the differentiator between us and, you go to Hitchin and there's 10 estate agency businesses there. They all say the same thing, founded in 1985. They all say the same things about service. They all close on a Saturday afternoon and Sundays, and there's one point of contact, but they're just all different colours, but largely the same.
Let me play the contra to that, because there are advantages of being part of a team, aren't there? Is that if you only have literally one point of contact, and I operate a self-employed model myself, so I'm in your camp on this one, but if you only have one point of contact, one of the challenges is when that person isn't available, if they are the only person who can handle a lead. I had a guy called Luke Somerset sat on the sofa yesterday who works for a business called Finamply, and they basically handle the mortgage leads which come in off Rightmove. So they get over 1,000 mortgage leads a month coming in from Rightmove. And what they worked out is that if they respond to a lead within 1 minute instead of 4 minutes, they are 65% more likely to convert that into a mortgage. And then let's play that back into the self-employed arena, one point of contact. Having a 28-second or a 1 minute response time is not realistic, is it? No. So how do you deal with that? Because you're right. For the consumer, having one point of contact, big tick. As long as that one point of contact is available.
If I was up against a self-employed agent, I would have a box of tricks that I would be able to overcome the objections. I mean, if I'm a self-employed agent against a high street agent, I'd have a box of tricks there. And so I would never be calling them bedroom agents. That's the biggest, no that you can do as a high street agent. Who's going to answer the phone when you're, when someone's calling about a viewing? And obviously if I'm a self-employed agent, I'd be saying, who's going to be answering the phone on a Sunday afternoon when someone wants to view a property? So, and then the client's got to decide, I suppose, leave it down to them.
So the teams concept, I've had a couple of agency friends who've come to me and said, hey, I'm looking at EXP as a conversion of my business. I think I'm going to get slightly cheaper portal costs as a consequence. And they've got this great model in terms of going out and hiring self-employed agents. And I looked at the numbers, and my personal opinion on it was I could see how it was great for the agent, the individual agent. I could see how all their staff would earn more money. And I could see how EXP were going to make their money. As an owner of an independently branded estate agent, you're an entrepreneur yourself. I couldn't quite see the value add for the business owner. How would you sort of respond to that?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. And I think the value to the business owner in the first year or so is it doesn't exist. We own their, we're not acquiring their businesses in so much as we're paying them money to then become shareholders. So they maintain their shareholding of their business. They maintain their brand of their business. We just take all their contracts on. So we take the portal contracts, we take the CRM contracts, we take compliance contracts, training. Obviously they can get to come to events and stuff like that. And obviously they can then remove the payroll because all the agents within that business become self-employed. So I think there's lots of upsides in that respect. Agents are estate agents' biggest asset. The good agents are going to go out and find business and win business. And so if EXP are going to come along and start taking their agents from them because we pay the most and we've got the biggest scale. So I've had agencies that have said, well, I'll just do 70-30 as well. And so you can't. I'm on a 3.9% net profit margin is what EXP works on. So if a business wants to go to a 3.9% net margin, they can do 70-30, but they will not make any money. They won't make the money they're making currently at their 20%, 25% margin. They can't compete with us. And this is not arrogant.
No. I mean,
an arrogant
you've
thing.
got to run that model at scale to make it work. Yeah.
But those individual branches, those 1, 2, 3, 4 branch, brands can't do 70-30. So they can't compete with us. So eventually their agents are going to hear about us because of the model, because of the recruitment model. So their branch managers are going to hear about us and they're probably eventually going to go, okay, I might as well be part of it. So by joining EXP, you then remove that threat because they're already part of EXP, they're already self-employed, they're already getting the benefits of what EXP do. That's a removal of a threat. It's, you look at a threat and then you look at an opportunity. That one of the threats of EXP is we take your agents. The opportunity is, well, if you can't beat them, join them. And that's what, Benjamin Stevens has just joined a self-employed model, and that's Steve Wayne's single line is, I couldn't beat them, so I'll join them. I think the other thing as well is the de-risking element. I ran Hatched, I had 54 staff at one point, 20 agents out valuing houses, 22 or whatever it was, along with a load of sleepless nights because I couldn't pay the VAT bill from one month to the next. Obviously Connells came in and rescued me on that front. I was, the sleepless nights disappeared when Connells came along. And I kind of think that that's what EXP can do, is we can remove the sleepless nights, we can remove the risk of a market downturn. The last point I would make on this, and I don't want to sound like a sales pitch, when I was a kid, I was a smart, not very good at school, but I was smart, I was determined, I wanted to earn money. And so I was attracted to the bright lights of estate agency. I was attracted by the 40, 50K that I could earn in 1997. That was a lot of money back then. And ironically, the average salary for an agent is 40, 50 grand. So we're not attracting those bright young things now because they want to earn 150K. They're going to do recruitment or they're going to do social media or whatever they're doing. By having a self-employed element, and if you were part of EXP, you can now comfortably go out and attract the Adam Days of 1997 by saying you can earn 150 grand a year. And
this is an incentive for people to convert to EXP, is it? Yeah, getting the next Adam Day.
The next Adam Day, the next Ian Preston, whatever it might be. But the bright young things who I don't think we attract to the industry because our fees are so low. And so if we can give more money to the agent, we're going to attract better people. And so it allows the agency to grow without risk and also attract the best young things.
So I think one of the big assets which estate agents don't value, which they have, is their brand and their data. And I think it's the hardest thing about joining EXP is to go to a place where you have no brand and you have no data. And that's why it just takes that while to hockey stick up in terms of the growth of your business. I guess I wonder whether, as an agency business and as someone who's done this myself, can you give self-employed agents access to those two commodities and in exchange for that, allow them to get going quicker, do more volume, and therefore hopefully create a win-win partnership. So we have to get ourselves in a position where we can charge more. And as you know, I'm a passionate believer in flexible fees as a method to do that. We've got to allow people to earn more. And one of the other consequences, which segues nicely, is about technology. With the tools, and they are just tools, which are now available to us, and they're not quite ready yet. I also wonder whether this could be the golden age for self-employed, because of agentic AI. So my argument that I was making earlier on about, well, if I'm not available as an agent, that's a downside compared to being part of a team of 5 people. If you can have an AI personal assistant who handles every inbound lead and responds to it and gets the customer to the point where they want to facilitate a viewing booking, a mortgage booking, a valuation booking, and they can facilitate that by talking to your CRM and booking that in, then suddenly, I think one of the big challenges of the self-employed model just goes.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've just built our own AI inbound call handler using GPT prompts on GPT, and I built it while I was on holiday in the summer. GitHub and whatever else. Took me a few hours, and I've had to connect 11 labs. I've had to connect, Twilio and other bits and pieces like that. But we've now got an AI call handler that can now interrogate the data on the CRM. Yep. But I've got it to probably 80% without involving any techies, and the techies are now going to finish off the final 20%.
You can now MVP, minimum viable product. You can prototype stuff in a way which is frightening. And this is where we are today. Can you imagine where we're going to be in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years?
It's crazy. We had our QBR in Madrid yesterday, and got back yesterday, and I sat there in the QBR whilst one of the guys was presenting, and my session was up next on AI, and I literally built, in the space of an hour that he was talking, my own little assistant that could read my emails, extract information from hotels, flights, parking spaces, car hires of all my traveling, and input the reference numbers and the times based on time zone into my Google Calendar in an hour, whilst I was sitting in this meeting watching Jose Antonio present.
Hannah, don't listen to any of that, by the way. Again, I'm telling you, your job is 100% safe. The bit which I'm really excited about is independent business owners now being in charge of their own technology in a way that was that were effectively gatekeepers.
Yes.
If today 20% of our service is delivered digitally, I'm not saying that's the right number, but imagine it's 20% today. In 2 years' time, could that be 40% or 60% or 70%, whatever that, it's certainly going to be bigger than it is today, isn't it? So if you don't have control over being able to build your own digital interfaces, digital experiences for your business, if you can't control that, then you've now outsourced 50% of your service to a third party, and you're waiting in their dev queue for them to get round to your idea when they've got 1,000 other people throwing ideas at them. I think it is unbelievably dangerous. I think it's one of the big bear traps that as an industry we've got coming up, and we have to take back control. I don't like the Brexit slogan, except in this context.
Yeah, 100% agree, and I think people should be throwing themselves into this, because if they're not, they're going to be left behind. But it does also make me worry. Whilst you were talking, I was thinking, I wonder what Ian thinks about where this takes us as a workforce, because all of a sudden, if the workforce becomes less because of AI and agentic AI and taking control of our own stuff, then that's going to affect the housing market in terms of people being able to buy houses, because if the workforce is affected, it affects the housing market, and then we all rely on our income from the housing market. So
one of the strange things about staying in London in this house is how noisy it is. It's just absolutely crazy. Where I live, there are fields at the front, there's fields at the back, there's a really big farm at the end of up my road. They've got this huge potato farm. They do like potatoes from McDonald's, apparently. So when you eat fries, it comes from up in Yorkshire. At one time, if you went back 200 years ago and you were to look on those fields, there would be gangs of men digging, ploughing, with animals, with ploughs. And now there's one GPS-controlled combine harvester going around, and and I don't even know what the machines are called, but the thing which gets the potatoes out of the ground. And when they then go down the streets to clean up the streets, they've got big machines which do it. So my point is that agriculture used to be 20-30% of the workforce. It's now 2-3% of the workforce. Question: what happened? Have we still got all of those agricultural workers moping around the streets? No, you've now got social media content creators, and you've got vibe coders. And so basically my point is that throughout human history, was agricultural revolution, industrial revolution, the internet revolution, there has been tasks which used to be done by humans, which are now done by machines. That is now going to expand into the service industry. What we will find is that there'll be other things which add value. And where we started this conversation was the value of face-to-face. And in a world where 50-60% of experiences are digital, the value of this, I think, is going to go up. Yeah. And the great news for agents is that that's the core of our experience. So I think it's my job to ask you questions, but
no, but I agree. I think human connection, human events,
that's it.
Concerts and sports events and experiences and in person is going to go through the roof, I
Absolutely.
think.
So listen, final question. If there's one bit of advice that you could give estate agents going into 2026, other than to join EXP as part of your teams, okay, so I'm going to knock that one out straight away. But what would be the advice that you give an independent estate agency owner as they go into 2026?
I mean, it's the Nike, isn't it? Just do it. Most people are limited by the fear of failure, the fear of what people think of them, the fear of it not succeeding, the fear of a client not wanting to use them because it's their biggest asset, because they're only 25 or they're 55 because they're coming to the end of their career or whatever it might be. Fear is what limits everybody. I've recommended this book so much, but I Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Susan Jeffers, the life changer for me that kind of created the mindset where I have no fear, and the only fear I have is one of regret rather than of failure. I hate it when people say that this isn't for everybody, because I believe it is for everybody if you're prepared to rewire your mindset. I think when people say self-employed is not for everybody, just starting a business or doing something different or learning to do the tango or whatever, asking someone out on a date or whatever it might be, it's the fear that stops people from doing that. So you've got to get over that and start fearing regret rather than fearing failure. And
I think it's a really nice way to frame it, Adam. Yeah, really nice. And I think there are, broadly two types of people in the world: those who think they can and those who think they can't, and they're both probably right.
very good.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you.
Cheers.